F125's My Team 2.0 has been a complete failure. Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video, and welcome to something a little bit different. Now, I don't normally like doing these kind of doomsday videos here on the channel, but I think now that F125 has been out for what is sensibly half of its game's life cycle, we're 5 months in, there's probably about another 5 months worth of where F125 is the main focus before kind of everybody's eyes are on F126. And I think it's a good time to kind of look where the game is at and talk about some of these still glaring problems with F125. Now, I'll be honest, coming into this year's release, I was really excited. More excited than I have been in the last couple of years, to be completely honest, for one reason, and one main reason only. That, of course, being the all-new My Team 2.0, built from the ground up, was meant to be a huge evolution of how career modes are played inside the game, and My Team, the hype for it is worse than it's ever been before. In fact, views are so far down on it that come the end of Season 4 of our My Team career mode, I'm probably going to end the series and do something different. Yes, I will talk about that when we get closer to the time, but why has My Team 2.0 failed so badly? What are kind of the other issues that are really crippling the offline longevity of F125? Well, that is what we're going to be discussing in today's video. Now, some of the biggest and most glaring issues have been fixed. They did take far too long to get fixed, but for example, easily the biggest bug in the game was how just hilariously OP the AI were in wet weather. Of course, that got fixed last month. They also made some AI tweaks apparently in the dry, but we haven't really noticed any difference with those. But the fact the game had been out for 3.5 months when they finally addressed that, already far too many people have already given up with the game and are playing other things. You cannot have a bug like that, that could have been found out in an hour's worth of, testing online or bringing in creators to take a look at as well. Everybody could have told you on day one that the AI were probably a little bit too weak in the dry, but definitely far too strong in the wet weather. That being said though, of course, the AI is still a step up from F124. I think people that say, oh, F124 was a better game probably don't remember how bad doing AI races was, because everybody just sat in a DRS train until the very last lap, and then the car, usually in second, would make the move for the lead, and nobody else could do anything, because, and I mean this genuinely, usually the entire grid was just in one DRS train. Now, I've seen a lot of people complain that DRS is not powerful enough on F125. Personally, I don't think it's too much of an issue around most venues. I think that, DRS shouldn't be a save-all, in racing. And we've kind of seen that more in 2025 IRL as well. A good example was just how long it took Lando Norris to get past Charles Leclerc last weekend at the US Grand Prix. But yeah, kind of those balancing issues, they can kind of be looked past, I think, for a lot of people, if the core gameplay is really good fun. And My Team 2.0 just hasn't lived up to the hype. Now, I've been playing the F1 games on and off since Cody's basically took over the license. I remember playing F1 2010 back on my PS3. 15 years ago now. Yes, that makes me feel incredibly old. I remember obviously going through like the lock-to-lock steering on F1 2011, some of the major updates, and kind of that first real high point of 2012 and 2013 before we kind of went through the dark ages of F1 2014 and 2015. Then I started making YouTube videos around F1 2016, of course, where we got the first iteration of career mode. Of course, that worked out quite well. By sort of F1 2018, 2019, it had grown a bit stale, and then of course F1 2020, My Team came out. And yes, it was probably helped a little bit by COVID and everything going on with that. We had a lot more eyes on the games, but it was absolutely game-changing. And I'll be honest, when F125 was first announced, when all these My Team changes were first announced, I thought this was going to be the next huge evolution of career modes on the F1 game. And looking back now 5 months later, honestly, it's taken a step back. And I think there's a few really glaringly obvious reasons for this. Number one, I know that why EA haven't done it. I know why they scrapped it from My Team. but the option or the inability to race as yourself in my team has ruined it. Simply, I understand that obviously their whole argument was that it was no longer realistic. You know, they even mentioned, I believe, back on like F1 2020 that I think it was Hector Raback back in the 80s was like the 1970s even, I believe, was the last owner driver in Formula 1. It hasn't been done since then. But people are playing a game. They don't care. And I think for a lot of people as well, there was so much less incentive to write the history of a current driver than there had ever been before. You know, you could race as yourself, you could build up your own storyline, you could have a lot of fun with it. The option, obviously, or the removal of that option, I think really did kill the hype for a lot of people. And then even more than that, the idea that you could kind of change between two drivers, I think made it really confusing for a lot of people, because generally speaking, whichever driver you didn't race as did absolutely terribly, especially in the early game as well. But even later on, I think, obviously, at the moment, I've got Isaac Hadjar and Oscar Piastri as my two championship drivers. I do every single race as Isaac at the moment, because that's just the storyline I built. But if I did one race as Oscar, Isaac, I think he's leading the World Championship at the time this video goes live. Isaac would probably finish about 14th. In one race immediately. And it's just a bit of a shame that kind of the driver ratings, the way they work, and, you know, ultimately it's so difficult for a driver that's 85 rated to beat a driver that's 95 rated. I get that it shouldn't happen week in and week out, but it should be able to happen from time to time as well. So I think, yeah, that's kind of like the big reason why people have got bored of my team so quickly, is that it doesn't kind of really feel like your team anymore. It feels like your team, I guess, but it doesn't really feel like you are the one driving, which, yeah, is a huge shame. That, as well as the fact that although my team has definitely been built from the ground up again, you know, there have been some huge changes, the way upgrades work. You know, you've obviously got like the mentality points and all that kind of thing, and obviously how you can get facility upgrades, everything like that, you know, sponsor agreements, all that kind of thing. Still, somehow, the old issue persists. It's horrendously unbalanced over quite a quick period of time. Now, back on F120 through F124, if you started as a backmarker team, you would basically follow this procedure. Season 1, you'd be a backmarker, you'd try and get yourself up into the midfield. Season 2, you try and go from midfield basically to a competitive frontrunner. Season 3, you battle for a championship. You might even be able to do it in Season 2 if some results go your way. And on F1 My Team 2.0 on F125, Season 1, you basically try and get to the top of, you know, kind of try and get into the midfield. Again, I'm aware there's no real backmarkers in Formula 1, so you basically spend that first year trying to end up better than Williams, because they are pretty much always the best of the rest. Season 2, you then obviously try and make your move towards the front, and then Season 3 or Season 4, you fight for a championship again. It just is so repetitive for everybody, and especially where it's imbalanced in the same way as it was on previous games. It's just a little bit boring, and it kind of just means that you pretty much know exactly how your career mode's going to go, unless something absolutely crazy happens. Now, if you start as a midfield team, it basically just means Season 1, you fight to the front, Season 2, you fight for a championship, and if you start as a front-running team, you obviously just fight for the championship immediately. It basically just means if you run as a backmarker, obviously it's a 3-season campaign. If you run as a midfielder, 2 seasons. If you run as a front runner, it's just 1 season before things get very boring. And that kind of ties into some of the other things that are still a glaring issue with the games. It's something that I moan about so much as well. For those of you that come out to my live streams, I talk about it all the time. How 10 years on from when practice programs were introduced to the games, are they still hilariously imbalanced the further you go into career mode? They either become impossibly difficult, generally that's the qualifying simulation run, or impossibly easy with like the race sim runs and things like that. There is kind of, you basically go into a practice program and know you're either going to smash it, and it's going to be really easy, or it's going to be impossible, and there's just no point in doing it, and you're then basically locked into either you're picking up, 150, 200 R&D a week, or 600. There's kind of no middle ground with it. Of course, yes, it can be affected track to track as well, and that makes it obviously even more of a problem. And it basically just means that a lot of people, myself included, when you go down to like a 16 race calendar, you don't tend to get rid of the races that maybe you don't like. You tend to just get rid of the ones where the AI are either really bad or really too good. Spa is a great example for this. Obviously a sprint weekend on F1 25. I love Belgium, I love driving there. 110 AI in a Lewis Hamilton career mode I did with Ferrari a few weeks back. I went from last to first in 9 laps, just by every single time, on maximum AI difficulty, the AI lift up at the top of Eau Rouge and Rayon. How does that get past quality control? How do they not understand that, most human players, I would have thought, that are on anything higher than about 75 difficulty will take Eau Rouge completely flat out every single lap, and still the AI having to blend out on the maxed out difficulty. But then on the other hand, you go to a track like Silverstone, they have got impossible amount of grips, impossible amount of traction, and also impossible amounts of ERS battery usage. It's again another big issue that isn't talked about enough, and I know I've mentioned it in other videos as well, but the AI obviously don't simulate battery. Now I understand that trying to get 21, obviously for F1 26 when Cadillac are in, 21, maybe even 23, if obviously we're still able to do my team in that game. Trying to simulate 23 AI cars would take up so much horsepower on, an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5, or of course, a decent middle spec PC. But without it, you just, without some proper quality control, it's just so hilariously unbalanced that you basically kind of know what the narrative is going into every single weekend as to whether you're going to do really well or really struggle. And you do get some tracks where it's pretty even, but there's also far too many tracks where it just isn't. And that's still where it becomes a ridiculous issue. Another big one that I don't think people talk about much with F1 25, the budget cap. Of course, one of the biggest things in recent years, has made Formula 1, why there are no backmarkers anymore is because of the budget cap. Every team's on a much more even playing field. It doesn't work in F1 25. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but not only do you not get penalised if you go over the 135 million in Season 1, after Season 1, it doesn't even keep track of how much money you're spending properly. It's just a rolling total from the start of Season 1. It makes no sense. If you go into the game, the budget cap says you started out by spending like 170 million quid. You think, oh no, I'm going to get penalised for this. And then nothing happens. And then you realise at the end of the season, you actually only spent about $60 million because it started out at a completely random number anyway. Other things that seem to be an issue throughout career mode as well. One that I've noticed, maybe it just happens to me, but it seems to happen quite a lot. Ferrari usually become OP. I mean, Charles Leclerc's won 3 World Championships in a row and could be on for his 4th during this season of my team. Ferrari, I don't kind of know why it is. I can only assume that what happened is EA kind of built Ferrari up to be a slightly better car in the game. Then they sucked in real life early on this season, and they kind of just didn't really get the balancing right again. So Ferrari pretty much just immediately leapfrogged McLaren halfway through Season 1, and then since then, yeah, Charles Leclerc's reign of dominance inside my team series has been a little bit boring to watch. One of the only drivers that can keep up with him is Max Verstappen, until he decides to retire after a couple of seasons. Yes, I'm well aware that he does talk about it IRL from time to time as well, but when he can keep up with the Ferraris in that Red Bull from time to time, it does make things a lot more interesting. Of course, sometimes you get what I like to call max attack as well, where sometimes Max Verstappen's AI in the game just becomes hilariously OP. I know Gary had a real problem with this, where Max won like 9 races in a row during his first season of career mode. I've never seen anything that extreme with Verstappen, but it is definitely an issue that other people have struggled with. McLaren pretty much always become midfielders as well. I don't know why, but after Season 1, if they haven't won the championship or struggle against Ferrari and barely hang on for the championship, by Season 2, they're midfielders, and unless Lando and Oscar move, you never really see them fight for wins ever again. That being said, though, a couple of the other ones, Williams, for example, can become quite a decent team. I think in my driver career mode, Williams at one point were second or best team, which is obviously fantastic to see. That had no influence from myself. And then, unfortunately, again, on the other side of that, Sauber even, I should say, who obviously are going to become Audi in 2026, they absolutely suck. They just get worse and worse as career mode goes on, until you get about halfway through Season 4, and then they finally start piling on upgrades, and Hulkenberg's AI is quite good, that it then means that he can start to fight. Another big one, I know obviously that they didn't want to rate the rookies too high to begin with, but all of them suck. VCarb again are absolutely terrible. Hajar and Lawson, it has been years since I saw them score a point in the game. Bortoletto can be the same as well, despite the fact that all of them have been able to hold a candle to their teammate IRL, and desperately needs tweaking. And I mean, this all just culminates in the idea that, you know, my main channel, Matt212, we are getting close to 150,000 subscribers now. And the video I did on Matt212 gameplay, which at the time I uploaded it, I believe I had about 5,000 subs on that channel, has done more than twice as well. That Aston Martin driver career mode video, round 1, has over 100,000 views. My Team 2.0, the first video I did with that all-new game mode, has got less than 50,000. It is done so much worse than previous years' episode 1 of career mode. And this isn't just an issue that's affected me, it has affected so many bigger and smaller content creators across the platform as well. My Team 2.0 has not been popular, and it has not worked. Now, there's no point in me kind of doing this kind of video and not trying to at least provide some kind of feedback, some kind of tweaks and changes that need to be sorted out as well. So, apart from kind of the general balancing of the game, you know, play testing it a lot more, get creators in. I know I've said it before on videos, but if EA wanted us to have access to the game for a couple of weeks, just to do like some proper long-term career mode testing, it would absolutely be something I'm down for as well. I've wrote down a couple of extra ideas, though. I do think the option to enable the kind of like ability that sometimes upgrades just will not stay on your car when you go into a new season. Every team will lose some upgrades. They can be completely random. You know, I don't think it should be forced on, because if someone's worked really hard to try and get a front-running car and then suddenly they get screwed over, you know, that might stop them from playing. But for someone like me that, you know, wanted to kind of do 7-8 seasons of career mode on this game, the opportunity for just a bit of randomness to happen, you know, a little bit of kind of, you might get screwed over one season, Ferrari might get screwed over one season, McLaren or Red Bull might get screwed over, Williams might have a miraculous winter break and become, you know, like a championship favourite or something like that, I think would be absolutely fantastic. The way upgrade prices work inside the game as well, desperately need to overhaul. I know there is the option for high inflation inside the game in like one of the scenarios, but it needs to be more like that generally, to try and give the game a little bit more longevity. And then cash needs to actually work inside the game. You basically spend your first 2 seasons with no money whatsoever, basically trying to scrimp the pennies wherever you can, and then you get into like Season 3, Season 4, and then you've just got so much money. Part of that is obviously down to the sponsorship agreements, the way they just don't work the way I think EA intended them to, and then other times as well, you just obviously end up with a lot of cash that you can't do anything with. You're going to hire the most expensive drivers. I think now I've got over 100 million in the bank, and I've done every facility upgrade inside the game. One last one as well, I think, or 2 last ones I really think they need to do as well, is they need more drivers inside the game. Now, I understand putting a few of the F3 guys in is a great first step, but we need the entire 30 Formula 3 roster. We need the F1 reserve drivers, whether that's a Bottas or, you know, obviously I know Perez wasn't this year, but a few more of the reserves, you know, Mick Schumacher, the ability for those guys to become available. And I'm going to say it as well, Formula Academy. Maybe it takes them, you know, 4 or 5 seasons to show up, but you could end up with like a Dorian Pan who makes it to Formula 1 down the line as well. A bit like what you can get in F1 Manager, obviously what you used to be able to get in F1 Manager. And the last point I really want to make, and this probably comes from playing NASCAR 25 a lot over the last couple of weeks as well, they need F3 in the game. It's obviously NASCAR now has effectively their top 4 series inside the game, with obviously Cup, Xfinity, Trucks, and ARCA. MotoGP, of course, has obviously the Moto Junior class, I think it's called, which is Moto 3, Moto 2, and MotoGP. F1 just has F1 and F2, and obviously even that is an old version of the F2 drivers as well, last year's roster. We need, obviously, the most up-to-date driver roster inside career mode, and we need F3 inside the game as well now as an option, because ultimately the career mode on F1 is getting left behind now by these other games. I think iRacing are doing a great job with the NASCAR title. I'm really, really looking forward to IndyCar next year, because I'm sure we'll end up with like the US F2000 and the Indy Next Series inside that game. And EA and Codemaster are, just like I said, getting left behind with that overall career mode experience. And it's why, I'm still smashing out NASCAR videos. I know the game's only been out a couple of weeks, but I cannot wait to get up in the morning and play more NASCAR 25. And on the other hand, F1 25, my team, I don't get up with the same kind of joy. But yeah, that's just my thoughts and feelings. Like I said, I don't want to make this video too long, but I did just want to have, a little bit of a rant, a little bit of a ramble, and kind of wanted to see what your guys' opinions were as well. So let me know down in the comments below your thoughts and feelings on what EA need to do to basically try and save F1 25 or the future of F1 career mode as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll be back actually tomorrow, hopefully, with F1 My Team returning again.